And I think we are live. Here we are, another Cloud Foundry in the light. This is the second one, so we're still figuring out how this all works. But if you're interested in talking about Cloud Foundry, you can talk to me on Twitter at either Cloud Foundry or Little Idea, and we'll get you on Cloud Foundry on the light if you want to tell your story. But this morning, I'm joined by someone who I just met at the Cloud Foundry Summit a couple weeks ago, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the stuff they're working on and how they see Cloud Foundry ecosystem evolving. And I'll just let him introduce himself a little bit. So I'm joined by Mark Carlson.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I am Mark Carlson, and I'm with a consulting company, a systems integrator based out of Denver, Colorado, called ECS Team. I've been the CTO here for about 9 months now, after having been a consultant for about 6-7 years previous to that. So,
how's the weather in Boulder? Or you're in Denver proper?
Yeah. We're in Denver. We've actually stopped raining, so that's awful nice. And I was down in Texas this week dodging the floods, so it's good to be back in Colorado.
You guys went down there just for that, right?
Just for the floods.
Just for the flood.
That's right. We didn't have enough water here, so.
So you telling me before you had a background in computer science, and then you started working as a consultant, did some stuff with some big name companies before, and now you're nestled into this consulting thing, and it's not only Cloud Foundry, but you guys do a lot of things. But I thought it'd be interesting to talk about a little bit about your career and kind of watching these trends and how that got you to the point where you are now and the things you're focused on now.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate to have a really diverse, IT career. I started with one of the big four consulting firms right out of college a lot of years ago, and got to work on some great projects. And eventually joined another startup consulting company at the very beginning of the Clientserver era, when that was still in the evangelism stage, kind of much like platform as a service is kind of today. And so
what we're going to do is we're going to have two computers, and they're going to talk to each other.
That's right. And there's a network in between. And then we call it a LAN. Yeah. So those early days. But
when we were talking a little bit before, you said there's these cycles, and you saw the OO wave and the SOA and the rest of it. So maybe it's maybe we can come back to that a little bit. But I just think it's fascinating to see how these things are kind of circular.
Yeah, and so I mentioned the client server wave. I followed that one and happened to be on the very beginning of that, and worked for a consulting company that was really well positioned for that. And we rode that wave with tools like Power Builder and Sybase back in the bygone days. But eventually went to work with one of my clients running the data center. So I did a little data center ops. And after that gig, did software development, so ran a software development organization, was a CIO for a couple of years for a lending company, and so I've really had a chance to work in a lot of different roles, and with a lot of different technologies, and part of those roles, really we followed those technology trends, either on the business side, the enterprise side, trying to get business value out of those, or on the consulting side, both trying to help our clients get business value, but obviously pursue revenue growth from the consulting side. So
how did you get Cloud Foundry on your radar, and kind of what was your path to Cloud Foundry?
Yeah, so a number of us were kind of watching inside when both Spring and kind of the whole vFabric thing were inside of VMware, and we knew that it was likely going to be split out and didn't know what it was going to be called, and so we were kind of there watching in April of 2013 when Pivotal was born, and that was kind of cool. But really had downloaded the open source bits of Cloud Foundry and kicked the tires a little bit, but didn't necessarily have a good customer use case kind of ready to go. And so it wasn't until I was working with an enterprise customer that was looking to update their software architecture for the next 15 years, if you will, that I really began to have both knowledge of Cloud Foundry and kind of a customer right at hand who needed that. And so that's when I really began diving in. That was probably, it was somewhere after the first platform, the first kind of preceded summit, and I was kind of bummed that I'd missed platform, and then almost immediately after that heard about the first Cloud Foundry Summit, the one in 2014, and so paid my way to go to that one, just really on my own because I thought it was the right tech to go deep dive into, and then came back very excited from that and began kind of convincing my customer at the time that that's what we ought to be doing. And so fortunately, they kind of followed along and allowed me to take them through POCs and that whole selection process and making the business case internally to sell upper management on that, and that in itself has been a process, but that's how things a lot of times happen inside a big organization. So,
well, I want to come back to that in a minute, but the fact that you kind of saw this community evolving, maybe just spend a second comparing and contrasting what you saw at the first summit versus what we had a couple weeks ago.
Well, I think there's first of all a lot more attendance. I think we were somewhere close to 1,000. Generously speaking, on the 2014 side, and then there was just no doubt that we're well over 1,500, almost 1,600 for this year's summit, and the energy level kind of follows that. You get more people and more actual customers with apps in production, and that lends a lot to the hallway conversations, and the networking is less about, hey, what are we gonna do, and more about what have we been doing since the last summit and problems we've solved and the good things that we've seen and stuff like that. So it was a big difference in the two in terms of energy and size and it just has the feeling of momentum. Having seen several of these technology waves in my career, you can kind of tell now when something's taking hold and going beyond hype and really starting to for people to adopt and begin to get real business value out of it. And that's what I see right now in the Cloud Foundry community.
And you said last year you paid your own way to some, but this year I believe you guys were sponsors, right?
Yeah, so we've gone from Mark paying his own way to joining ECS as the CTO, and then bringing 5 of our team, as well as being a sponsor and actually presenting one of the talks there with one of my customers. And so it's been pretty neat ride in the last year to really dive in and very supportive community. People have been very welcoming. Hey, glad to have you, and how can you help us? How can we help you? That's been nice.
So let's talk about ECS team and your business a little bit. What do you think your kind of differentiator is, and how you? I mean, I know you're doing some work with Pivotal, and it's not only Cloud Foundry work, but what do you see as kind of your value add for the customers?
So ECS is about 150 total people and about a 15-year-old company, and have done a lot of different technologies over the years. But what we're excited about with Cloud Foundry is really the opportunity to kind of help our customers get to that next level. So the whole cloud native applications buzz, the microservices buzz, they're following those trends, and they have the same business problems that all of us do, which are the business needs to go faster, and IT is burdened with the keep the lights on apps, but also knows and wants to innovate, and so we see this as a great way for us to help our customers do both things, both go faster, but not with shadow IT and a credit card and an Amazon account, but with robust kind of scalable enterprise tech. That's what we've been doing for our very large customers now for years, and so it gives us a way to help go fast, but do it in a way that those apps are going to be scalable and manageable, and they're not going to fall over the first time some real volume hits.
So what's sort of an ideal engagement for you guys, and what do you look for in the opportunity? What do you look for that you think will either be kind of warning signs or what are the critical success factors?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm personally looking at is I'm kind of over working on things with small chance for real improvement. So little incremental improvements, that's nice and that'll pay the bills. But I'm kind of at the stage of my career when I want to work on really transformative projects. So the things that we're looking for in a customer, right, are there's a certain level of desperation, either to seize a market opportunity or to fend off the threats, and a desire that really is not just coming down from the top. We talked about this the other day. Not just coming down from the top or coming only up from the bottom, but really both senior leadership and the grassroots of dev and ops all want to do something better. And when you got those things coming together, then that's a pretty powerful thing. So,
I'm not sure I always would use the word desperation, but I definitely like seeing people who are motivated to change. And sometimes those things can be external existential threats, and sometimes that could be other realizations, but it's not very. It hasn't been very rewarding trying to explain why you should use a platform to someone who doesn't see the point of IT or competing on software.
No, that's true, and I think for us, there's enough people that are beginning to get it that we've had plenty of opportunity to talk to people that are already kind of there, and they just need help getting there. I mean, one of the things I mentioned earlier is that we can help kind of accelerate that decision process by doing a structured, what I call a fit analysis. It was just a streamlined, selection of technology and a business case to go with that, so that you kind of get from kicking the tires and on a part-time basis to a real actionable decision in a quicker time frame. The other thing we can do is help implement the platform. We're doing that with our various Cloud Foundry partners, including Pivotal, and so in that short, just a number of weeks, getting it installed and some initial services of their own onto the platform, so you begin to see value without waiting weeks and weeks and weeks, and where upper management's saying, hey, I spent a lot for this, where's the return?
And I know one of the things that you do well, and it's not something Pivotal focuses on a lot, is the migration of the legacy, and maybe we could talk a little bit about what you see happening there, kind of what are the patterns, what again, success factors versus risk.
Yeah, I think that's an area where we really think we'll have the most opportunity for growth and really scale out in this Cloud Foundry opportunity is in helping look at the large portfolios of apps that enterprises have, and first of all, helping triage the ones that make sense to go on a platform. And I think my thinking on that shifted a little bit in that initially I was really viewing that as, the apps to move early on would be ones that are already kind of stateless services or lightweight collections of SOA services, and then tackle the harder ones kind of down the road. But I think one of the things that we've been talking about in the last few weeks is, if you've got an app, and maybe it's not massive, so it's going to fit on the platform, it's not going to take 20 minutes to start up. If that app is even a poorly behaving app, it's maybe got some instability, it's kind of opaque, it's hard to see inside it, that app might actually be a good one to start with, because you're going to begin to get some benefits of the platform right away without really rewriting your app. It might take some kind of light touches to get its config from the environment, or maybe switch its backing services away from a file system to something else. But with some pretty minor changes, you can get an app like that onto the platform and begin getting some benefits pretty quickly.
So all those apps that your sysadmins have to restart every other day, all of a sudden you let the platform...
Yeah, or the ops manual or the cron job says, restart this app at midnight every night just because it makes it more stable, right? That's a good one.
We've all been there.
Yes, we have. Help create maybe some of those, but try not to.
So I think there's a couple different ways we could talk about this, but I'm curious about two things, and we can maybe do them in order. One is this migration to microservices and how that fits into your mind about the trends, and you went through this before, and how does that compare to SOA versus what we're doing now? And then the other thing, which we just sort of touched on lightly, is the benefits of the platform and what you're getting out of the different pieces of Cloud Foundry integrated together that you don't get kind of putting that stuff together yourself.
Yeah, so I'll take the second one first. I mean, I think if you take my example of maybe not a medium-sized, poorly behaving app, if you get that onto the platform, it's going to start reaping some benefits from things like aggregated logging and automated health monitoring. I mean, a lot of times we don't know our apps have failed until customers call us, and we'd love to all be doing this this great proactive monitoring that Etsy and others are doing, but in most enterprises that's just not the case just yet. And so being able to have the platform aggregate and stream logs to things that provide us ways to harvest metrics out of that fire hose of information coming out, and then if the app goes away, if it fails, automatically restart it without having to wait for somebody to do manual intervention, or notice it's down and then take a manual step to restart it. Those are things that that can help a legacy app kind of right out of the box. Now that doesn't apply for everything. It's got to be small enough. It can't take 20-30 minutes to start up the container. But I think when that is right, when those situations are right, then you can get some benefit from the platform kind of right away. And obviously, adding another instance is now possible, which is with just an API command as opposed to Herculean heroic efforts. So.
Yeah, once you got something into the automation, the ability to scale it or restart it is trivial. You don't even really think about it.
That's right. It's just kind of, you take it for granted after you're working with this stuff for a while.
And my I mean, I haven't been doing a lot of the migration work myself, but just sort of looking at what people have done and having, my background with automation and trying to do this stuff before, it seems like there's sort of three buckets, and depending on the org and how long they've been around, things are in those buckets. There's the stuff that you look at it and you're just like, that will go on the platform tomorrow, easy. And then there's the other end of that where you're like, that will probably never go on the platform. Right. And then there's the middle, which is kind of what you're talking about there, where it's like, oh, if you change this file to be injected by the environment, or you do a few things here with the data services and this kind of stuff, then and all of a sudden, yeah, you can open up like this third thing. And where you are working, kind of the customers you have, where do you see most of these enterprises fitting into that, and how do you approach kind of putting together because it ends up being all about the social engineering and the narrative to get people to want to change this. So if you have these people who kind of attach their identity to being the guy who wakes up to restart that one thing, like how are you thinking about bringing that transformation into an organization?
No, that's a good question. I think sometimes we engage with customers and they have the misperception that they have to move everything onto the platform in order to get value from the platform. And so, whether it's 3 buckets or 4 buckets, it's helpful to begin to go through a dialogue of saying, well, let's look at the ones that are high business value, first of all. So you want to keep these apps. These are not things that you can, just get rid of. And also ones that you actually want to change. So if you got a high business value app, but you don't need to ever change it, and it's not unstable, well then that's that one can probably wait till a subsequent wave. But if you got those high business value apps and you want to innovate on them and you want to update them, but you're struggling with how to go faster with that, I think those are good candidates. And I think most companies have some of those that are these gems that really their customers maybe internally like them. They want to add new features, but they're putting out a new software release. In some cases, just a couple or 3 times a year, and they know they have to go faster. And so those are the ones that I think are good candidates. And then depending on what their architecture is, I think is where the work is. Sometimes you can get a lot of value just by carving off a slice, and not trying to eat the whole elephant, but saying, hey, here's something that looks like a bounded context. It doesn't even have to be a purist definition of that, but it's a group of functions that are going to change together. We can carve it off of the existing app and move that chunk, and then glue it together with some API layers, and then innovate on that piece that maybe it's a monolithic application, but there's a piece of it that has more business value than the rest.
This is something I've been fascinated with, and kind of watching the dynamic is the power of the service broker model. And I don't think people fully realize that in most organizations I've seen, to be able to leverage those existing legacy services that they're running without replatforming them.
Right.
Use the service brokers to connect to those legacy systems of record, and then iterate the apps on top of those, leveraging your existing assets without really having to do the full migration first.
Yeah, I think that's right, Andrew. I think whether it's a service broker or sometimes just a simple user-provided service, either one of those can help connect the new apps that you're building in the platform to the things you already have. And no one's going to take everything they have and move it onto Cloud Foundry in a short period of time. It's just too big. And you spent years building up that portfolio. It's not going to all move or transform in a short period of time. But I think there are, whether it's standing up a service broker so you kind of get some full life cycle of that data connection, or just doing a user-provided service, either one of those can kind of plug into the existing apps or data stores and allow you to build new things in the platform that have all the benefits of either lightweight services or microservices, in a very short period of time.
So then let's transition to that other topic about these trends, and maybe get a little philosophical. And you've been around long enough to see a few of these cycles, so just having that perspective and going through the client server and the OO and the rest of it up till now, what do you see the landscape of platforms and microservices and kind of what people are excited about now? Where do you see we're at on that curve? And then I think you've also probably seen some things that got a lot of hype but didn't really pan out or sort of ended up being
short life
failure. So it's probably worth reflecting on that, and I'd be curious to have your perspective on how you see things playing out.
Yeah, I think, if you think about where we were in the IT industry 20 years ago when client server was kind of new, or almost 25 years ago now, it's a little scary. I think, we hadn't had a lot of trends. It was kind of platform one, and mainframes, and then we just had this local area network thing when client server came along. And so if you think about it, it was really one of our first kind of technology trends. And so the evangelism had a different flavor, because for most of us it was like the first big new thing, unless you were kind of going from mainframe to mid-range. It was kind of the first big new thing. And then each subsequent kind of wave kind of had that feel, well, this is the next big new thing. But I think if you roll the clock forward, one of the things we're seeing in this era is that we've got this whole platform 3 thing going, where we have 4, really 5 trends reaching maturity in a relatively short period of time. So the social and mobile and analytics and cloud and now Internet of Things, all those reaching some kind of maturity where you can get business value from either one or more of those things combined together. That's different. That has a different feel to it. And I think with 20, 25 years of perspective on these kind of trends, we also know that this too shall pass, right? None of these things is the end-all be-all answer, and so there's a little bit more pragmatism, maybe, that, hey, we recognize that there's huge benefits from cloud. That's really changing, transforming the way all of IT is being run. But it's in and of itself is not the answer. We can't. If my analogy is, if you go to Amazon and swipe the credit card, you've got a VM vending machine. You can get a VM really fast, in under 5 minutes, where most enterprises, and I ask this question whenever I go to a new customer or prospect, is how long does it take you to get a VM? How long does it take you to get a physical piece of hardware? And it's always in weeks. So rarely you'll hear, well, we can get a VM in days, but it's never minutes, unless there's, I think the number of customers that can do that in minutes is very small. And so, you're just moving the funnel around. If all your cloud strategy is to get a VM faster, your devs are still, stuck with all the hard, heavy lifting of, provisioning the stack, right? And that's one of the things that I think is different about Cloud Foundry, is that it's really automating all of that infrastructure and software infrastructure to where you've really compressed the time to go from a business concept or a business idea to running code, and not just running code in a prototype, but running code that if you were to put it into the right, Cloud Foundry implementation, is highly scalable and very robust. And I think that's different. That has a different feel to it than the technology trends, because client server was great. You could go really fast. You could prototype really fast, and then you needed to put it in production, and that was a marathon process in and of itself.
Well, part of it's my background, but I always tend to emphasize the operational benefits and the day 2 going forward benefits, and not that the development life cycles and the speed of that aren't important, but there's plenty of people that are singing that song.
Right.
So once you get it in production, like that's just the ante you pay to get to the real problems. And I think that I've said this in many other contexts, and maybe you could make a comment on it, but it's really reinforcing what you just said, where a lot of the web companies that I worked for or with over the last few years, it was basically table stakes in 2007 to be able to dynamically provision infrastructure to join the cluster. Mm-hmm. Right? Not everyone was at the highest level, but it was pretty much the ante to play. You couldn't scale. You couldn't do any of these things if you were talking about getting hardware in longer than weeks. I mean, I knew people who could get ridiculous amounts of hardware just because of the relationships they ended up with the vendors in days. And once it was in the building, to get it onto the cluster was literally minutes, from hardware provisioning onto the cluster in minutes. And so all we're seeing now, in my opinion, with things like Cloud Foundry, is taking all those kind of best practices that evolved building those kind of systems and packaging them for the consumption of everyone else.
Into a platform, yeah. And I would say that certainly a lot of companies could do that back in 2007, but I would say most enterprises
Yeah.
kind of mere mortals, right, couldn't do that. And so a few could, but not many.
They could. They had all the same tech, right? Like
Right.
they just it was their process and their mindset and their kind of socialization of how things should work and their expectations that were the limiting factor. And we touched on this briefly, but maybe we can close with this idea of when you're going in and you have whatever decades of legacy, and some of that is technology and some of that is process. How are you helping people kind of internalize that first step towards reimagining their process that will then drive the technology?
Yeah, I think you touched on it. Really, I think a lot of us were probably not aware of what was even possible, right? And sometimes we have really smart people in enterprises, and they're even motivated, and they want to do a great job, but they're just not aware of what's possible. And so I think one of my roles is to kind of spread that awareness and say, hey, this is the kind of stuff that isn't just for the unicorns and the the Netflixes and the eBays and the Etsy's and those guys. This is stuff that you can do, and we can bring that kind of magic to your everyday job, and the apps that you know and love or hate can benefit from those things as well. And so part of it is being able to tell the story, to say this is what's possible, but you don't have to go create it from scratch like those guys did. You can start with a platform that really accelerates that process, so that you're starting, standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. You're starting, based on years of their R&D and hard knocks, and can build on that, so you can get there a lot faster.
It's the fire of Prometheus.
Yes, that's right.
Another favorite thing, and then we'll end unless you want to have a final word of wisdom, is my favorite quote from Adrian, and he's got a lot of good ones, is when someone asked him, you had all this talent at Netflix, you guys are special, you guys are unicorns, and he said, we hired him from you. We hired all of these people from you.
Yeah, I like that quote. I saw it in I think a presentation you did, and one of the things I like about it is that when the lights begin to go on, and it happens for developers differently than it happens for ops people, and they begin to see that, I'm not just stuck doing things the same way, but I can actually really move the needle forward in terms of our ability, but also my own experience, right? So I'm in this organization, I want it to succeed, but man, do I want to work on some cool stuff. And that's what I think it gives enterprises a way to say, you don't have to leave and go somewhere else to work on cool stuff. We can actually bring a cloud platform in here, and you can use it to accelerate our business and our apps and those kind of things. And so I think that's that's part of the transformation potential is it's not just the apps get better and the culture gets better, but I think individuals day-to-day jobs get better when they can work on, that you're getting them out of some of the tedium and mundane stuff into working with, working at a higher level, if you will, in the same thing.
Are you having fun?
Yeah, it's a kick, and I think my team's having fun. That's been one of the fun things for me to see is, kind of came into this, and Cloud Foundry was new to ECS not too many months ago. And to see, some senior architects and senior developers with 20+ years of experience find out about this, and then all of a sudden the lights go on and they get excited about it, that's pretty gratifying. It means I think we've made a good choice.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to do this for years to come, and we should probably do one of these every couple months. Check in how you guys are doing, and
that'd be great.
It was good to get your perspective, and I look forward to what the next chapter of the story holds.
Thanks a lot.
And until next time, I bid adieu.